being unalived in Faerûn has rules. Jergal wrote them, and Kelemvor enforces them. But necromancy keeps trying to rewrite the fine print. When Myrkul exploded over Waterdeep in 1358 DR, the North learned how loud the grave can get. When Sammaster sold dracolichdom in 1373 DR, the sky learned to burn. When the spell plague broke the weave in 1385 DR, Szass turned corpses into infrastructure and sketched dread rings onto the map. In the deep background, Larlock watched from Warlock's Crypt, patient as stone. This is how the realms went from ledgers and last rites to siege engines powered by funerals, and why Kelemvor's edict still draws a line in bone. We'll start at the ledger, follow the rot as it climbs, and end at the ring forts and scars it left, from Warlock's Crypt to Neverwinter's Dread Ring. But before we get into the black arts, if you love the content we bring to you, do us a huge favor and smash that like and subscribe button. Then consider signing up for membership, where you will get early access to new videos, exclusive shorts, and videos you won't find anywhere else, and member shoutouts. It really helps the channel out and keeps it so we can keep raising lore from the dead like a finished Dread Ring. Anyway, back to the video. Before necromancy was a school of magic, death was a portfolio with a very tired clerk. Jergal grew weary and ceded most of his power to 3 ambitious mortals, turned powers: Bane, Baal, and Myrkul. That handoff set the cosmic ground rules. Death would have order, and the dead would be judged. Centuries later, during the Time of Troubles, 1358 DR, those rules were tested in the most public way possible, when Myrkul marched an army of the dead to Waterdeep and darkened its skies, only to be obliterated by midnight, soon Mistra, over the city. Fragments of his divinity lingered in artifacts, like the crown of horns, a reminder that even gods of death can leave messy estates. On one end, white rites keep faith with Kelemvor's order, stabilize the dying, consecrate battlefields, and shepherd souls to judgment without binding or enslavement. In the middle, gray methods live in the moral splash zone, spirit wards and emergency measures that draw on the echo of slaughter to save lives now, with vows to clean up after. And at the far edge sits black necromancy, where corpses are conscripts, souls are fuel, and the dead are weapons. The thing Kelemvor's clergy hunt, Velsharoon's scholars debate, and Thay turns into logistics. That argument, where to draw the line, shapes city laws, temple edicts, and how far an adventuring company can go when the village needs saving right now. After the divine shuffling, Kelemvor Lionsbane ascended and became Lord of the Dead. His edict is simple and iron, but far-reaching in practice. Undeath is an affront. Death must be met with dignity, and no soul is a commodity. In the Fugue Plains City of Judgment, Kelemvor presides while Jergal keeps the ledger. Souls are sorted to their patron deities, and the faithless or false are treated according to the ancient order he upholds, impartial, consistent, and unyielding. To his clergy, Doom Guides foremost, his standing charges are clear: comfort the dying, provide proper funerary rites, guard the dead from theft or desecration, expose and unmake undead, and refuse any magic that creates, binds, or enslaves a spirit from skeleton legions to lich phylacteries. Limited consultations with the dead to settle oaths, crimes, or last affairs may be permitted when done briefly, respectfully, and without coercion. But animation, possession, or trafficking in spirits is forbidden. From this point on, every necromancer who forges or fetters the undead is working against a cosmic house policy, and the bouncer wears a judge's mask. Roll back further, and you find Netheril, Empire of High Magic. One of its most enduring legacies is Larloch, a Netherese arch-wizard who took the long road to power and arrived as a Lich King. He founded and rules Warlock's Crypt in the Troll Hills, a city of the dead where, by the 1370s DR, at least 60 liches and other undead ancients owed him fealty. That fealty wasn't one-size-fits-all. Many were Netherese arcanists he rescued or recruited in the wake of the fall, and later tutored through the Lich ritual, swearing service in exchange for sanctuary behind the crypt's wards. Others bargained for access to hoarded Netherese spell lore, artifacts, and secure laboratories under long-term compacts that require obedience when he calls. A stubborn few serve under Geasa and name wards after breaking terms or threatening the compact, while near peers bow out of prudence, not affection, because the Shadow King can end them or simply outweight them. Larloch rarely strides onto center stage. He prefers quiet empire, a grant and task economy of knowledge for service, hoarding artifacts, curating lost magics, and brokering opaque deals with the living when it suits him. Even titans like Szass have dealt with him and left with perilous gifts. Centuries after Netheril's fall, a brilliant, unstable archmage named Sammaster decided the realm's future belonged to dead dragons. He created the cult of the dragon, uncovered and refined the dracolich process, died, came back as a lich, and kept pushing his thesis. Undeath makes dragons destiny-proof. In practice, his rite, codified in the Tome of the Dragon, required the dragon to drink a potion of dracolich transformation brewed by the cult's wearers of purple, then perish while cult mages bound its animus into a prepared phylactery, often a soul gem. Preparing that vessel involved specific spells. Enchant an item to prime the container, and trap the soul to draw and house the dragon's spirit. Once secured, the animus could later re-inhabit its original corpse or any suitably prepared dead reptilian body. Some formulas even folded in a potion of dragon control as a reagent to ensure cooperation during the rite. His crusade crescendoed in 1373 DR, the year of rogue dragons, when he weaponized the ancient Draco rage to drive dragons berserk and marketed dracolichdom as the cure. Heroes eventually shut him down for good, but the cult lurks on, a hydra of bad ideas with a bottomless recruitment pool. We've already brushed this moment, but it deserves its own beat in the timeline. During the time of troubles, Myrkul brought Undeath to Waterdeep's doorstep and turned the city's skyline into a battlefield. Midnight annihilated his avatar over the city, a victory that blasted divine residue into the world and sparked regional undead ripples. In plain terms, the shock of a god of death being unmade sent a necromantic pressure wave across the north. Wherever it crossed heavy death sites, city cemeteries, old barrow fields, plague pits, and recent battlegrounds, latent spirits stirred, crypt wards flickered, and isolated corpses rose as wights or zombies before being put down. Waterdeep's City of the Dead recorded nights of hauntings and corpse wakes. The watchful order and temple clergy burned through restoratives, performing mass consecrations and turnings to reseal the ground. A few fragments of Myrkul's essence adhered to objects, most infamously the crown of horns, creating mobile loci that provoked possessions and fresh outbreaks until contained. It's necromancy at civic scale. Griffin cavalry in the clouds, priests in the streets, and a populace learning that when gods fight, mortals clean up. The ripples faded as wards were reforged and the last eddies of divine residue dispersed. But for months, the north treated every cold wind from the barrows like a warning, and every flicker in a funerary sigil like a breach waiting to happen. In the shadow of divine reshuffling, Velsharoon rose to sponsor the curious, because someone needed to claim the space between Kelemvor's prohibition and Orcus's predation. A mortal archmage who achieved apotheosis, he framed necromancy not as blasphemy, but as a branch of magical scholarship, and that stance created a safe harbor for practitioners who refused to be labeled monsters. He is patron to necromancers because his dogma elevates inquiry over taboo. Knowledge is neutral, methods matter, and his church infrastructure, hidden ossuaries, warded libraries, and discreet laboratories, provides the manuals, reagents, and wards to study death without immediately crossing into enslavement. He is patron to liches because his rites and liturgies codify lichdom as an attainable, perfectible end state for the most disciplined scholars. His clergy guard phylactery sites, maintain ritual protections against meddling clergy of rival faiths, and treat liches as senior initiates rather than abominations. Where Kelemvor's doom guides will break chains on souls and Orcus demands ruin, Velsharoon offers recognition, procedure, and protection. A pact that says, pursue the secrets of life and death. Publish what you can, and don't waste good data. In short, he legitimizes the lab coat, a deity who blesses the study of mortality itself and gives mortals a sanctioned way to walk near the edge without, supposedly, tumbling in. In 1385, DR, the spell plague detonated across the realms, upending magic itself. Szass Tam grabbed the chaos like a craftsman picks up a new tool and turned necromancy into an infrastructure project. The Dread Ring. The Dread Ring is a fortified ritual engine that amplifies death into power. Tam engineered each ring in stages. First, Red Wizards mapped flows of post-spell plague magic and chose ground already saturated with death, like barrows, battlefields, and plague pits. They then raised a perimeter of blackstone obelisks, etched with binding sigils and linked by engraved circles and trenches of onyx ash. Once the obelisks were in place, they layered long-duration desecrate effects and circle of death-style wards, steeped the soil in negative energy, and tethered it to the Shadowfell. Next, a reliquary of soul gems or equivalents were prepared with the Soulbind enchantment to trap the souls to catch and hold the animus of the dying. Finally, the teams using Thayan circle magic to pour prepared power into the matrix so the ring could convert mass casualties within its catchment into ritual energy. Once primed, a ring listened through planted tether stones at graveyards and killing fields and bled that energy inward. If the flow lagged, Thayan operatives manufactured calamity, plague, war, or, in Neverwinter's case, waking up Maegera to push the engine to threshold. When initial attempts inside Thay stalled, Tam exported the pattern beyond his borders and set lieutenants like Valindra Shadowmantle to re-establish obelisks, seed phylactery obelisks, and restart the lattice. On the Sword Coast, the Dread Ring plan went live against a city already staggered by the volcanic Mount Hotono's devastation and the spell-plague-torn chasm. Silora Salm, Szass Tam's field commander, chose Neverwinter wood for her lattice and built the ring the Thayan way. Blackstone obelisks, ash-etched circles, and a mortuary core primed with soul gems were aimed at awakening Maegera the Dawn Titan beneath Gauntlgrym, so the ash, heat, and mass death would cascade into the Matrix. To hold ground and manpower, she bargained with the Ashmedai, devil worshippers operating under Herzgo Alegni of the Shadowvar, ran bone harvests out of the Never-Death graveyard, and seeded anchor stones across the wood. Raids by harpers and hard-traveling adventurers such as Drist and Yarlaxle-Bintra shattered key anchors and destroyed Solora, collapsing her initial focus. Valindra Shadowmantle then moved to restore and reactivate the site, re-raising obelisks, reweaving the desecration lattice, and angling to seize Gauntlgrym long enough to leverage Maegera as a perpetual engine that dismantled remaining anchor points and broke the Thayan circle magic cycles before the Matrix hit critical mass. The ring failed. The scar remains. Neverwinter's Neverdeath stays noisy. Hotenau still vents, and the wood holds tangles of necromantic current with the uneasy knowledge that if Thay finds breathing room, it will try again. Threaded through all of this is a god war with receipts. When Orcus, apathetic in his complacency, was struck down and diminished by the drow goddess Kiaransalee, she moved fast. She occupied his abyssal lair Thanatos, raised her bone-cold city Naratir around the wasting tower, and set about scrubbing Orcus from existence. Her priesthood launched a grand erasure, defacing altars, purging scriptures, and working a dread ritual, remembered by drow theologians as a dwoomer of forgetting, so that speaking his name returned only silence. But Orcus clawed his way back, first as the undead shadow Tenebris, who scoured the plains for the primordial utterance called the Last Word. He used it to slay lesser powers and recover fragments of his true name, the cosmic identifier anchoring his power, while cults and lich priests hunted down the lost wand of Orcus and tended his corpse in secret fonts of negative energy. With the wand recovered, worship rekindled, and those death-charged sites feeding his essence, the Prince of Undeath shed the Tenebris shell, rose restored to full demonic power, and reclaimed Thanatos, unraveling her erasures and driving her out. On Toril, that cosmic tug-of-war showed up as cult wars in the Underdark. Kiaransalee's revenancers razed Orcus shrines and seized undead hosts. Orcus's faithful rebuilt demon altars and contested grave roads. Temples, cities, and whole regions became proxy fronts for a feud that treats memory itself as a battlefield. From Jergal's ledger to Thayan ring forts, necromancy in the realms keeps escalating. Philosophy to cult, cult to catastrophe, catastrophe to infrastructure, and, when it works, infrastructure to empire. It turns temple crypts into war rooms, battlefields into batteries, and quiet cemeteries into supply lines that feed ambitions older than kingdoms. It's the school of magic most likely to change the map, rewrite alliances, and ruin dinner, then come back for leftovers, leaving scars like dread rings, cursed relics, and restless oaths that keep tugging at the living long after the trumpets stop. So if a robed stranger offers you immortality, remember, in Faerûn, the bill always comes due. Sometimes with interest, sometimes with a dread ring. If you enjoyed this deep dig into the dark arts, we think you might like some of our others. Check out one of our videos on evil deities, or one of our most recent videos. Until next time, adventurer, may your rolls be high and your loot legendary.